continue on with Coach McDermott. We'll start with a question from Rex Smith, then go to Matt Bunanis.
Hey, Mac. Good to see you. Good to hear from you. So far, obviously the answer's going to be different because everyone's wearing masks, but on the floor, how has the team looked to you so far now that everyone's back in the gym working, and more specifically, how has Marcus looked?
Well, we're making progress, and I think the thing that we have to remind ourselves is, a lot of these guys haven't played 5-on-5 since March. Depending on where they were and what kind of access they had to the gym all summer long, I think with that comes some timing issues, some conditioning issues. Because had they been here in June and July, they'd have been playing pickup 4 or 5 days a week, and you kind of have all that down. So that's part of this process that we've kind of worked through a little bit since September 21st, and now we start for real today. But Marcus looks great. I think his body feels as good as it ever has. Now it's just a matter of besides the COVID, Marcus also had to deal with the rehabilitation from knee surgery that took almost 4 months. So with that comes, again, just getting your timing back, getting back in the flow, and feeling comfortable again.
Speaking of the COVID, how has the team done adhering to the protocols in place, and has it changed anything for you and the coaching staff?
Yeah, I think they've done a good job. I think they've, they understand, why we have to wear masks for practice, at least at this point in time. The mask mandate on campus is what it is. So, you have to be very careful. And I think a lot of the outbreaks that we've seen have not been related to athletics. I think they've more been outside of our little bubble here in the athletic world. So, but, guys go back to their dorms. They go back to their apartments. Obviously, they're exposed to a lot of other people. And you just have to be as careful as you possibly can.
Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Rob. Hey, Matt, how are you?
You need to get one of those hats for Niatawa with that new look he's got going, Matt. Maybe give him that hat.
I like it. I'm glad to pick it up. I guess my first question to you, was normally at this time of the year, you're in week 3. I think even at this time last year, you had already done the media blitz of New York and come back and got going again. Just from a coaching staff perspective of putting practice plans together, how different is the situation now, being that it's middle of October and you're on day 1 as opposed to normally being in the middle of week 3?
Yeah, I think it's obviously everything's different. We started school a little bit earlier, and our access to this building was limited to start with. So it's just going to be the year of being different. And as I've said before, we have to try to do different better than everybody else because there are likely going to be interruptions in our season, interruptions in our practices, and we've got to be able to bounce back from that the best we possibly can. But in terms of, you start with 6 weeks and where we are today and where we want to be when we play that first game, that doesn't look much different. I think we hopefully can move a little faster because we're a relatively veteran team. Having said all that, you kind of build up to an exhibition game or a closed scrimmage, and then you have usually a week or 10 days for the next one. Well, we're not going to have those. So, trying to keep this fresh, for a group of guys that's been through it a lot is going to be a challenge because 6 weeks with no outside competition is a long time. But hopefully, I think the bracket that came out for Sioux Falls today hopefully gives them a bounce in their step that you at least see a game on a schedule that is going to be played. So I think that'll be fun for them.
And I just had one on Jacob. I know he spent a lot of time in Omaha this summer, trying to get it right so he was ready for this whenever the season got rolling. I just wondered, in what you've been able to see from him so far, maybe it's unfair to compare what you saw in the past because obviously the injury did take effect on him. But what have you seen in terms of how he looks compared to the player that he was when he was healthy before the injury?
I certainly think he's in a better place today than he was pre-injury last year. He was probably 2 weeks into practice when he broke his leg last year. I think his movement and the bounce in his step, how quick he is off the floor, is better than it was in early October last year, right before the injury. And I think he's moving towards getting back to some of that bounce and explosiveness that we saw when he was young. He's much bigger. He's 40 pounds heavier than he was when he came here as a freshman. So, but he had his best practice of the few practices that we've had in our last practice on Monday, and that was encouraging to see. Made some great plays around the rim and did some good things on the perimeter at the top of the floor. So, I think he's excited to be back, and I think he's making really good progress. And now it's just up to our medical team and communicating with me as to, he's probably never going to practice 3 straight days, certainly not 4 straight days. So we have to manage that load a little bit with him because, it could be 2 full years before he's back to where he can be, coming off an injury such as that. So we've just got to be careful with him, but so far so good.
Thank you.
We got try to limit it to one question until we to keep the time. But John, Eric, Adam, and Andy for the next one.
Yeah, I was trying to come up with a report, Matt, but I got nothing. My hair's out of control. What is there? Do you have a plan for how you're going to structure practice? You mentioned the recommendations. Maybe I heard you on a different interview. The recommendations for what the NCAA laid out for contact tracing and quarantine. Those are recommendations, not requirements. But I wonder if it's going to impact how you conduct practice. Like, are you going to try to keep guys away from one another and do that? Have you thought about it?
We've been careful if we break up into 4 groups. Attempting to keep the guys with their roommates and kind of their lifting partners the best we can. As you move forward and it's more 5-on-5, that's very, very difficult to do. I'd like to think because we're still working out with masks that we're protecting ourselves, much more so than others. But I think you're really limited in what you can do. And, the reality of it is if that becomes the law of the land in terms of how we're going to do contact tracing, and if the whole program has to shut down for 14 days with 1 positive test, we're not the only program in trouble. You imagine what you've seen in college football and the NFL and Major League Baseball. If there's 1 positive test and you shut down the whole organization, there are not going to be a lot of games played. So it'll be interesting to see, as we move closer to November. The good news is we're still 6 weeks out from playing, and I think we're in a different spot today than we were 6 weeks ago, and hopefully 6 weeks from now we're in a better spot as well. But in terms of controlling it on the practice floor, outside of wearing masks and trying to control the small groups and trying to maintain social distancing when you're talking to the team, there isn't a lot else we can do.
Last year you guys were picked 7th in the preseason and then made the run for the league title, and I know that you don't put a ton of weight on your preseason polls, but this year no doubt you guys are going to really probably pick right here at the top, if not already. Do you feel like your group is ready to handle those expectations? Zed Russ is going to probably be up for a lot of national honors this year, and just kind of what their makeup is in the noggin, I guess, to handle that.
Yeah, a big part of me thinks a lot of those expectations, I think you can become full of yourself at the end of a good season. You're on campus, you go to your postseason awards banquets, everybody tells you how great you are and what a great season you had. Our guys never got to experience that. They flew home from New York and we didn't see them again until August. So, that part of it never really happened with them. So I think it's more of a, we have some business to finish that we weren't able to finish last year because the season got shut down, and I think there's some motivation there because of that. So I haven't sensed that this group is full of themselves. Obviously Marcus is in a different situation because he's kind of been a guy that's flown under the radar his whole career back to high school. So he's going to have to learn to deal with that a little bit more than he has in the past. But, my message to Marcus is just impact winning. That's why you were a good high school player. That's why you're a good college player. You have your fingerprints all over the game, and don't get outside of that. Just be a little bit better version of yourself.
Hey, Coach, when it comes to Marcus's workload, especially here in the early going, do you still have to back him off a little bit and let him fully get back to 100%, or is he already at 100%? Kind of break that down a little bit.
I think physically he's at 100%. Now it's just the mental part, of getting back in shape and getting your timing right. But in terms of the way he's moving on the court, the way he's running, what he's doing laterally, his ability to get by people, that's as good as it's ever been. So, we obviously have all these contraptions available to man to figure out how far these guys are running and how much they're jumping during practice, so that we actually have some tools to actually measure some of that. So we'll make sure we manage not just Marcus but everybody's load as we move into trying to, gearing up practice a little bit more intense with what we do, just making sure that we don't burn these guys out.
Hey, Matt, how beneficial is it to have a tournament like you were going to go to start your season with a great field as that's in the field? And when do you think that we'll know, or you'll know, you can disclose what kind of schedule you'll have the rest of the way?
Well, I'll have a better answer as to how that's going to be on November 28th after we play those 3 games. I mean, it's a tough way to open the season, without question. But, the opportunity to get 3 quality games was too good for us to pass up. And, combine that with the fact that it's, 2.5 hours from our campus. So, I don't know that they're going to allow a lot of fans in, but the fans that they will let in, hopefully some of our people can get up there and enjoy our games. But it's one of the better fields in college basketball, and I think it'll be really good for us. The rest of the schedule is coming together. We're really waiting on the Big East to release something. It sounds like we're going to try to play multiple games in the month of December, and obviously that impacts available dates that we have for non-conference games. But with the 20-game Big East schedule, you're only allowed to play 7 more, and the 3 in Sioux Falls, and I think the game at Kansas, will happen. It looks like December 8th will be that game. In talking with Coach Self last week, and then we're still working out the Nebraska game. Fred and I have talked several times, and it's just they're going to have Big Ten games. We're going to have Big East games in December. Can we find a date for it? Where will it be played? I think both of us would like to play it. We just got to figure out, where we're going to work that in, and then hopefully add a couple non-conference games, at home sometime in that December period, or if we have a little bit of a window between Christmas and New Year's. So a lot of balls in the air right now. Certainly an atypical year in that regard.
We'll do 3 more questions for Coach. We'll do Joe, and then Tom, and then Aaron.
Joe, if you put your question in the chat window, we can do it that way.
While we're waiting on Joe, we'll go right ahead to Tom.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself, which is always interesting. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing good. I got a few people in my life I'd like to mute.
Perfect. You've already answered some of this, but I was curious. Last March, you didn't get a chance. You guys were playing so well at the end. You didn't get a chance to see your seed, the tournament, or where you would have played, who you would have played. As a coach, did you wonder, I guess, how you would have done? Maybe I know you probably wouldn't have had Marcus, and as a team going forward this year, does that make it easier to kind of motivate them? They didn't have that last year.
Yeah, I think they're motivated themselves. I don't think I have to add anything to that. I think they're very hungry to get back to that spot. Obviously my disappointment was for them. A guy like Calvin Jones that never had the opportunity to play in an NCAA tournament, and that was his chance, and it was going to happen, and then the world shut down. So, so that was more my disappointment, was for the individual guys and the amount of work that they'd put in to get to that point and finish the season the way we finished it, and with a lot of momentum in a lot of ways. So that was the frustrating part, but it is what it is. You deal with it, and you move on, and hopefully we can get back to that point this season.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, Joe's question was, he was just curious about the Kansas games, but he said we did. So we're going to move on to Anna for the last question.
Hi, Coach Mack.
Hi, Anna.
As you said, with no exhibition games and being thrown in kind of a tournament style play, have you made any changes to the team's conditioning or kind of tried to amp that up there for them?
We will ramp that up as we get closer to the middle of November. Again, going back to, it's an unprecedented year because of the few times that they've actually been able to play 5-on-5. So their bodies just aren't in the same spot as they normally would be when we start practice. And we've been able to do some of that, on the court, some of it out on the soccer field, trying to get the guys back into condition. But we'll gradually ramp up what we do from a full court basis in practice as we move forward each day.
All right. Thank you for your time, Coach McDermott.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Tom, is that a Brooklyn Dodgers pennant behind you? I didn't know you were quite that old that you watched the Brooklyn Dodgers.